Hi there. Today I am looking at a blog, reviewing a blog written by Maya, and the title is Not Everything Revolved Around Me, Day 149 in the Journey to Life blog series, where Maya Harel how writes about basically communication and how we tend to screw up our relationships with other beings because we are not actually effectively communicating, and especially with regards to expecting things from other people, and then when they don't do it we get angry and resentful and we blame them and have lots of internal backchat about them, when never having considered that we are the ones who basically should have communicated the point clearly, because people can't read our minds, so we should really just stop assuming that other beings know who we are and they know what we want and what we need, because that's just simply not reality. We do require communication to be able to understand each other and align ourselves with each other, and through communicating we can prevent a lot of unnecessary conflict. And I find this a very interesting blog topic to write about, because I've realized that for myself as well, that one point that was missing in my life, in my relationships with other people, was always communication, and something that I simply never learned from my environment is to simply communicate myself and to make myself clear in terms of who I am and what I want and what I expect from my environment. So I'm going to read through her blog as a point of support for myself and for those who are watching and listening to this video, so that you can also check it out and read through it and support yourself in understanding and seeing and realizing how this point of communication really is extremely important in establishing an effective relationship with another being, be it a partner or someone that you live with or your family or anything or anyone. Okay, so here we go. I forgive myself that I have not accepted and allowed myself to see, realize, and understand that unless I communicate with the beings in my world and come to an agreement with them on each and every single point, there is no way they would stand in alignment with me. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that for effective relationships with another human being, communication must be open and expressed, as this world is clearly showing us the consequences of ineffective relationships where beings are not communicating physically with each other, but rather having constant communication with themselves in their mind with no alignment to each other whatsoever. Okay, so here is an interesting point as well when we look at how or why there is so much conflict in our world today. Is actually interesting because we believe that we don't understand each other. For instance, religions or parents and children or partners. It's like we believe that we are just simply so different that we couldn't possibly understand each other, and so therefore there's just simply conflict, and we accept this as normal, when we don't actually realize that all that is lacking is communication. Actually, what's happening is that it's like we're not communicating with each other. So what happens is that we communicate with ourselves in our mind, in our head, and then we start talking to ourselves and reasoning with ourselves, and all these reasons come up of why someone else is doing what they're doing, of our own assumptions and beliefs and ideas and perceptions and interpretations, all the while creating this entire image, idea, perception and belief about who someone else is and why they do what they do, without ever really asking them, or without ever really communicating with them, without ever communicating about what we think or who we are or what exists within ourselves or anything. So what happens then is that people simply don't bother to get to know reality. through communicating with other beings, realizing that basically everything and anything can be worked out through communication, because I mean, a lack of understanding each other is always based on thoughts, because through thoughts we understand reality and ourselves and each other. So a lack of understanding of each other is always simply due to the fact that we have these inner thoughts that we're not willing to open and share, and that we're not willing to expose, basically, and that we're keeping a secret within ourselves. So the solution is to simply be completely open and honest and straightforward about what exists within ourselves as this inner reality of wants and needs and desires, and realize that basically every human being is exactly the same. They have this inner chatterbox in their mind, they have these specific needs and wants and desires. I mean, and it's completely possible for everyone to completely understand each other, and for everyone to have what they need in this life. All that is required is simply communication, and if communication appears to be like ineffective, or there's a struggle in communication, then we simply look at where we investigate the points where it went wrong. Like maybe it's a situation of language that isn't aligned, or it's a specific interpretation of a word that isn't aligned. I mean, this is exactly why we at Destiny are also focusing on redefining words, because obviously when we communicate with each other, and like two beings have completely different interpretations and definitions of one singular word, then I mean, like, you know, you have all these personal memories attached to a word and feelings attached to a word, and this is how complete misinterpretation of someone else's words happens, and then you get conflict. But if you have one definition of a certain word, then you know exactly who you are and who the other person is and what they are actually saying when they are using a word. That's why it's necessary to purify words for ourselves to establish effective communication between beings. And this is also why communication is very important in terms of investigating, you know, opening up for yourself and your partner, for instance, how it is that you experience certain words, or how it is that you interpret certain words, so that both partners can be aware of where the other person is coming from. Okay, but I'm going to continue reading now. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to expect someone to do something for me when and as I've not directly communicated and discussed the point with the being, and I haven't realized that unless the communication would be steadfast, direct and open, there is no way to establish a supportive relationship with a being that would be based on principle of oneness and equality. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to believe that that another may know what I require, need and desire and want without me directly communicating the point with the being, and within that, I forgive myself that I have not accepted and allowed myself to see, realize and understand that even myself am not aware of my requirements, needs, desires and wants due to the extent of the separation that I've allowed to exist within myself and as myself, and therefore there is no way another can know what I do not know myself. Coming from and stemming from the absolute blindness of who you are within yourself and where your reactions are coming from. So, okay. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to be frustrated and angry about another human being that didn't stand according to my desires while I was busy manipulating the communication without being direct within the communication, expecting the other being to comply to my needs, to know what I want from the being. And in this I forgive myself that I have not accepted and allowed myself to turn the point back to myself to see that I am able to assist and support myself in any given moment, in every breath, and essentially do not require another to do something for me to make me feel good about myself. So yeah, so that's a point of basically the whole point of expecting or desiring something from someone else is just a point of self-dishonesty, where we're not willing to realize that another doesn't have to comply to our needs or wants or desires, but that we are responsible for ourselves in this world. And currently all relationships are always based on self-interest and on this complete lack of understanding of this one simple point, where at the moment relationships are about beings who expect things from each other, and what happens then is that it relationships become a prison. Relationships become a prison where both beings are completely stuck because they both have these expectations, wants, needs, and desires towards each other, and they realize that these wants, needs, and desires will only be fulfilled by this other person if and when they themselves comply to the wants, needs, and desires of the other person. And thus, you're completely locked in to that relationship. It becomes a complete prison. And that's what relationships are at the moment. They are prisons, wherein we are prisoners of our own desires, basically. And obviously, eventually, there will be conflict and resentment and hate, because, we're not willing to realize that we are, in fact, the ones who put ourselves in that prison. So what we do is we blame the other person for the limitations that we experience within ourselves, and the fears and the uncertainty that we experience within ourselves. And so I'm going to leave the rest of the blog up to you guys to read and enjoy Maya's blog, because it's really cool. So I'll see you next time. Bye.